Cuando calienta el sol aquí en la playa. Siento.
Greetings from Castle Goring from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, hola, hola. Me llamo Meghan, la duquesa de Sussex. Pero ustedes pueden dirigirse a mí como Su Alteza Real y hacer una reverencia y adorar en mi altar. Because, well, I am sorry if I get a little bit confused. You see, as I have just told people, I learned Spanish. Oh, sorry, I am not Hilaria Baldwin. Sorry. I'm Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Oh, sorry. I got confused for a second. Well, I've got really confused about a lot of other things recently too, like saying that I learned Spanish in Argentina when I was there on a 6 weeks internship and had no time to learn the Spanish. Oh, sorry, again, I forget. I am not Hilaria Baldwin. You know, the problem with being an actress is that when you get inspired by the part, you sort of sometimes forget what you're supposed to be saying and doing. However, it's all about me. So without further ado, we're going to plunge right in because it's all been about me and unfortunately I haven't got enough attention. But I mean, it's not my fault. No, it's not. It's that dolt to whom I'm married. He's at fault. I mean, can you imagine that balding ginger? I mean, honestly, always looking so miserable. And I have to order him to give me his hand. I mean, doesn't he realize we're Romeo and Juliet? The modern day's answer to the greatest romantic couple of all time? I tell you, when you have such poor material to work with, it's such a struggle. Hola, pero. Ooh, maybe I should speak it in French. Pour un moment. Oh, oui ou non? Oh. Si or no? Ah. So we plunge in with what I am going to observe. It was not a quasi-royal tour, as the media kept on insisting on calling it. It was a pseudo-royal tour. Pseudo. Classy like when Maxie baby takes tea. Cock your finger and take tea with class. Klass. So, we will plunge in now with what Tears and BJs says. Some of these names. It's like there are two completely different Meghan Markles. Shooting daggers when anybody else is talking. One successfully learned and mastered the Spanish language while in Argentina for no more than a month. I think it was a 6-week internship. The other was so flummoxed at having to learn the words of the national anthem that it was still upsetting to her years later during her globally televised interview with Oprah It's like two completely different people. It is. It is two completely different people. It's phony and baloney. But you've certainly got the observation down pat. Wildly inconsistent. I mean, this exhibition, this visit, this pseudo-royal visit has been an education in how to cock it up gloriously. As someone has observed, and I'll read the comment out a bit later, no wonder their chief of staff made sure that he ejected himself before the tour took place. He obviously knew what was coming. Shaw Roberts says, this is not a royal tour. This is not a pseudo-royal tour. This is a rile, R-I-L-E, tour, intended to reap, to irritate, to lecture, to further exchange, designed to impress, destined to fail. Yes, very well observed pun, Shaw Roberts. It was, well, in Meghan's deluded, and quite frankly, I'm beginning to think she is truly insane. Because, I mean, she doesn't learn. And she keeps on perpetuating the same mistakes. And she expects a positive outcome when every other time it's been a negative outcome. So, and of course, one of Einstein's definitions of insanity is you do it 999 times, and thousands you still expect a different result. I think the purpose of the tour was to get footage for them, to get money for them. Remember, they have had the coverage totally sewn up. Everything has had to be done through the vice presidential office or through Archewell, which means that basically all the money goes to them. Well, at least 95% of it. Also, attention. She really thought she was going to be covered in approbation instead of opprobrium. So it's footage for a show. It's money for their coffers. It's to assert their importance and feed their addiction to attention. It was also intended to rile, you are absolutely right, to rile the royal family and rile everybody with their absolute rubbish and nonsense. Playing the race card, which we'll get to in a little while. Playing the, look how gorgeous and glamorous I am. And I'm so beautiful that I can always be inappropriately dressed, because it's not about class and dignity. It's about, let me entertain you. Let me make you smile. Let me do a few tricks, some old and then some new tricks. Where have we heard that one before? Angela Jacobi says, it's definitely the worldwide Meghan tour. She's trading on her husband's name and status, but won't even allow him to speak. Must stand in front of him and interrupt him at every chance she gets. Well observed. But every now and then he was obliged to speak, and he spoke better than she did, which is not surprising. He's more authentic than she is. What I find really interesting about this talk is that most of the Colombians had absolutely no idea who either Meghan or Harry were. No idea whatsoever. When they were on various visits and they were people said, oh, who's that? Because there was a huge security presence to keep people at bay. And also, of course, because it's such a dangerous country. But Harry was very happy to put himself in the line of fire nevertheless, as was Meghan, because the drug cartels in Colombia are a lot less dangerous in their estimation than the unarmed British public. Do they think that looks kill? I just make that observation for what it's worth. But we're not even going to go there. But most Colombians had no idea who they were. The Colombian media was as relatively dismissive, except, of course, the supporters of the government. Evidently, the comments on Twitter and whatever else the media, you know what I mean, the websites were systematically negative. And more than one person asked, who's here? Oh, Meghan and Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Who's Meghan? Oh, she's the Duchess of Sussex. And who's Prince Harry? Oh, who's the Duke of Sussex? He's Prince Harry. Where's he a prince of? What they have revealed isn't how important they are, but how totally dismissible they are. Well, the tour has confirmed that their desirability is at a zilch level, because the reaction in Colombia was either indifferent or hostile. And although Bianca Betancourt did a very good job of, oh, Harry, the beautiful Duchess of Sussex, so elegant in an evening dress at 3:00 in the afternoon, cock your finger and take tea, was so beautiful and elegant and warmly received by everybody, blah, blah, blah. Well, Vanity Fair and Harper's Bazaar and People magazine have cut and pasted the copy, as indeed has the Mail in this country, and one or two other publications as well. Although I have noticed that the Express cuts and pastes some bits and then actually makes sure that it doesn't cut everything and sprinkles the truth throughout the accounts. Very naughty of the Mirror and the Express. But anyway, there we go. There has been widespread criticism in Colombia about the millions of dollars. Evidently, their security cost over $2 million US. They had to draft in not hundreds, thousands of operatives to protect them against the drug cartels and also to protect Francia Marquez. Evidently, this has made the government even more unpopular than it was before, and it was pretty unpopular before. And of course, it has shown that Harry and Meghan don't have pulling power. Most of the venues, the audiences were very small, and even then, they couldn't fill the seats. Look at the photographs. Well, certainly look at the photographs that have been published in Colombia, because, of course, occasionally people take things with their phones. And also, even Bianca Betancourt and the Archewell photographer was obliged to publish sufficient photographs to give a flavour of the things, for anybody to discern that the attendance record was pathetic. Far bigger news has been the sinking of the Petition, that wonderfully elegant boat with the second tallest mast in the world, which evidently seems to have been what tipped it over. It was owned by Mike Lynch, who was just acquitted in America, having spent years in America. He, his wife, his daughter, some of their friends and some of their legal team from Clifford Chance, the famous firm of solicitors, were all on a celebratory cruise. They were off Palermo in Sicily, and there was a sudden tornado, and it tipped over the Petition, and he and his daughter seemed to have been trapped in the boat, as were some of their guests. Several of them survived, including his wife and a woman with a 1-year-old baby. And she managed to keep that baby afloat despite the bad weather. And I mean, just wonderful. And they all ended up clambering into a lifeboat, 15 of them, and they were picked up. Tragedy, a great tragedy. And that has really been bigger news, and justifiably bigger news, than Harry and Meghan's visit, which really has had entertainment value. You know, Fredo wrote farces. There's no reason why we can't enjoy the Harry and Meghan farce. We do not have to do anything except laugh at the farcicality of it all. What has also been bigger news and has actually eclipsed the Harry and Meghan rubbish has been the arrival of the King at Balmoral. Now, I know that people are saying that the royal family is getting together and they're going to have a family conference to strip Harry of his dukedom. Harry can't be stripped of his dukedom by the king. But would it be desirable for the family to come together and try to take some steps to prevent this ongoing farce? As long as it can be done legally and constructively, and if it can't be done legally, it's not going to be done. They will do it. But if they can't, they won't. The situation is very complex. What has also been almost as big news, if not as big news, as Me llamo Meghan, la Duquesa de Sussex. And, since it's really so difficult for me to speak Spanish all the time, because, you know, I have an earpiece because so that I can have it translated from Spanish into Spanish for me, so that if I forget my lines, and also when I'm listening to the Spanish, I haven't spoken Spanish for 20 years. I learned Spanish 20 years ago when I was in Argentina for 6 weeks, which of course is a total lie, because she then went to Madrid. It's in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story, that she actually went from Argentina to Madrid, all paid for by her father, of course, where she took language courses in Spanish. Now, I will give her credit. Her Spanish is clearly not fluent, but it is clearly not the Spanish of somebody who is unfamiliar with the language. And the pace, the accent was very mixed. 1 minute it was Castilian, the next it was Puerto Rican, the next it was Venezuelan. It never really became Colombian, and it definitely was never Argentinian either. But because each of those countries has a slightly different accent. But it's an amalgam, but even Andrews, the possibility, because the press have been full of the fact that Andrew is going to be chased out by October of Royal Lodge. The king wants him out, and that's why the king has taken away his security. No, that's not why he has taken away his security. And also, Princess Anne doesn't have constant security, nor does Prince Edward. So why did Prince Andrew need it? Also, unlike Princess Anne, who is on the Gatcombe estate, and Prince Edward, who is at Bagshot, Andrew is at Windsor. Royal Lodge is on the Windsor estate. The whole area is policed by security. So when the press says this is a sign that he's going to have to leave Royal Lodge, on the contrary, the mere fact he's not going to have the level of security he had means there is a greater incentive for him to remain within the parameters of a property that is policed by royal security generally. So, and Harry and Meghan, they have been roundly mocked and criticised by anybody of discernment, notwithstanding the cut and paste jobs done at their behest by Bianca Betancourt. Didn't I look great? Didn't I look great? I just looked fabulous. And all those changes of clothes. And, I mean, when you're with poor people, you need to show them what class is. I mean, got to spend at least $100,000 a day on clothes, and maybe another $200,000 or $300,000 on jewelry. After all, if I don't have all of that, how are they going to know I'm classy? Pen 3 says, how much of what the duo have said has been fact-checked and proven to be not accurate information? And that is putting it politely. Well, I mean, we all know that the truth and Harry and Meghan are very strange bedfellows. One of her first lies was that she learned her Spanish in Argentina. She can't have learned her Spanish in Argentina. She was only there for 6 weeks. During the 6 weeks, she was a go-for, which is what all interns are. Take those papers to the consul, take those papers to the finance director, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to go and meet someone at the airport? You can ride in the motorcade. Yeah, oh gosh, I can't think of anything I'd like more. Maybe I'm going to meet a rich man. Maybe I'm going to meet a rich man. Wouldn't that be fabulous? I'm so classy. I just need to meet a rich man. So the first lie is that she learned her Spanish in Argentina. She didn't. She learned it in Madrid after Argentina. That's the first lie. And you can tell it because of the way she sometimes pronounces the C as TH instead of as. So instead of saying, for instance, hacer, she says hacer, which I speak Castilian Spanish to the extent I speak any Spanish at all, and which is very slight. But my accent is Castilian-ish. For somebody who doesn't speak Spanish properly, the overtones would be Castilian. Hers are an amalgam, as I said a little bit earlier. So that's one lie. She then brought up the Procter and Gamble lie again. I gewalt geschrien. I mean, a yell and a shriek to God. When is this woman going to learn? Everybody knows it's a lie. Everybody knows it was a class project. Everybody knows that Hillary Clinton did not respond, nor did Gloria Allred. Nobody responded. Her father organized it with a friend of his at Nickelodeon for her to be interviewed, and he didn't want to disappoint his sweet darling, so he told her that she had received responses from Hillary Clinton and Gloria Allred when she hadn't. He's come out with it and said it. But she still insists on telling this the lie. And she knows it's a lie because, aside from anybody else, I've pointed it out repeatedly that you do not write a letter to a major company that has a major advertising campaign, and the month later that they pull the plug on the ad, implement your suggestion, and you are responsible. The turnaround time is much longer. So that's unrealistic of her as well. But it shows her determined detachment from reality. And she was on and on and on and on again about how she'd written in and they changed it. But this time, if you listen carefully, she doesn't say that she got it changed. She says it was changed a month later. So even though it's a lie that is actually truthful, but it's intended to deceive. So it's a lie. But it actually, if you listen closely to what she says, because she has so often said that she was the person who got that ad changed. And also, I make the point now as well. This she advances as an act of feminism. It wasn't an act of feminism. Her mother wasn't around. Her father was bringing her up. She objected to the ad saying that women were using ivory soap, dishwashing liquid. Think about it for a second. What she was really saying was that Daddy is the one who does my washing up. Daddy is the one who takes care of me. It's not fair to Daddy and men that women are given all the credit for doing housework, when men like my daddy do the housework too. So even if she had been even if she had been responsible for the ad being changed, it wasn't to further feminism. It was because her father, her adored father at the time, because not her absent mother, her adored father, was not getting the credit that was his due. Think about it for a second. Also, I need to bring to your attention something that has been brought to mind. There is a YouTube channel by the Sidley Twins called Twin Talk with the Sidley Twins. Sidley. They are American identical twins. And there they have posted a video called Don't Cry For Me, Colombia. And in the video, they go through a series of lies that Meghan and Harry have told. And they use their various claims at various times to contradict themselves. The Sidley Twins have done this. It is well worth looking at, because the Sidley Twins are damning Harry and Meghan out of their own mouths. Lies, one lie after another, one false claim after another. Do these people don't think that nobody has a brain in their head? Do they think we've blown our brains with Colombia marching powder or weed or some other substance, and that we can't make the connection between the fact that if it's right that 2 and 2 is 4, it's wrong that 2 and 2 is 22. I just make that point for what it's worth. Authentic Zizzy says, I love these names. Dear Lady C, Megsy did not pass the white card until in her late teens. Tweaky, nosy bosy. We only need to see the photos as a child. I think she's traumatized by her blackness and hated it with all her being. She uses the race card because it is convenient for Megxit. I agree with that. Every bit of research tells me that Meghan is a self-hating woman of colour. She couldn't wait to get erased every identifying feature of her sub-Saharan heritage. And just because she bronzes up doesn't mean that she is embracing her African heritage. White people get tanned. But she's made sure that she keeps her scalp on display, and it's lily white. That's not by accident. She also only bronzes up certain parts, and she makes sure that she misses others, so you know the whiteness that lies underneath. I think she is, of her conduct, an extremely self-hating woman of colour, which is tragic. But yes, she does use the race card because she's more ambitious. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about a cousin of mine. I'm very close to this branch of my family. My father's first cousin married a woman of color. She looked white. She looked Mediterranean, but she looked absolutely white. She was actually a very handsome woman, very noble looking. All of the children looked what in the vernacular in Jamaica we called coloured. But because they were a member of a well-known white family and they didn't look very coloured, they had no idea that people regarded them as coloured until they went to school abroad. They have been an absolute education to me as to the complexities of people who almost can pass for white, but don't quite do it in a white world and in a world of colour where they're regarded as white. And I think Meghan has a lot of complexes about her colour. I have based this upon what I've heard from her family and her teachers, all of whom have been extremely generous with their time for us to try to unlock what is in some ways a tragic situation. But you see, Meghan, when she was growing up, she was in a very mixed environment. And people now say, oh, well, she clearly didn't look white. Well, there are loads of white people with frizzy hair. A lot of Scots have frizzy hair. And I know from her teachers at school that they didn't realize Meghan had a mother of colour because they never saw the mother except at her graduation. Now, there can be endless speculation as to why Doria was absent, but one of the plausible versions is that Meghan didn't want her mother around because Meghan didn't want to be identified as black. And Meghan's story about the box shows, and her rage when the British press called her black. Remember what she said on the Netflix show? She was infuriated that the British press referred to her as black. She'd never been called black before. She put as much distance between herself and blackness as she possibly could. But one of my cousins and his mother, who was a dyed-in-the-wool racist, I have to tell you. I mean, she used the N-word with a frequency that was quite extraordinary. I mean, her children and I often comment on how pejorative she was to the staff and how racist her remarks were to the staff. But when her son stood to make a lot of money out of a book that meant that he had to identify himself as a person of colour, she not only funded the project, because she had a lot of money and loved money. So she not only funded the project, but she was perfectly happy for him to play the colour card. However, they actually had a neat way around the dilemma, because he simply used an unidentifiable version of his name. So, but the point is, when it suited them to make a lot of money using the colour card, they used it. Meghan, opportunistic as well. Once it suited her to play the colour card, she would sooner be identified as a woman of colour and identify herself with people of colour, whom she clearly despised, which is because she certainly despised her of her conduct and attitudes and surgeries. She clearly despised that part of her identity, which was of colour, until it was a convenient card, because her ambition was greater than her dislike. So, and now she has discovered that she can make mischief with it and boost herself. But when you despise something that you then embrace it, it has to be psychologically very troublesome. But also, Francia Marquez has been playing the colour card. That's part of why Meghan was asked. She was frank about it. She said that she was inspired by the Netflix series, which I gather is not entirely accurate. But let's take her at her word, because the Netflix series played the colour card with a frequency that was truly off-putting and frightening. So, then of course, there are the issues of reparations that have cropped up. But I think I'll try to get to that a little later. Shazita says, could King Charles not have contacted the president in Colombia in private to put a stop to that visit from happening? Surely the president could have come up with a good excuse to the vice president why they couldn't host Meghan Markle and Harry. Does Charles have no power or influence over anything? Yes, he has some power and he has some influence, and it is inappropriate to misuse it. And it would have been a misuse of it. However, the visit has been such an outstanding failure that let's see what happens. But he could have, through various channels, and this is how things are done, a quiet word here, a quiet word there. But once it's announced, and Meghan and Harry were very sneaky, as was Francia Marquez was very secretive. So they certainly did not inform the British government or the British court, as in royal court, not courts of law, that the visit was going to take place until after they announced that it was taking place, at which point it would have been an abuse of power for the king to try to stop it. So I hope that answers the question. Lynn Emmanuel says, Harry refused to touch her because of her sweaty, dirty clothes and the odour, and she did ask him to hold her hand and to kiss her, and he refused, according to newspapers in the UK and on Sky News. Well, she was sweating like a dray horse. That's actually a sign of good health. To sweat in the heat is actually healthier than to not sweat. Although there is speculation that the damp spot that was on the elasticated trousers was due to the fact that it wasn't sweat. One of the side effects of Ozempic is that you don't always have control such as you used to have, evidently. And I'm sure it's mischievous speculation, but it's speculation nevertheless, that it's the diaper that she was wearing that managed to, that a fluid escaped from, and I would imagine it was purely liquid fluid that escaped, as opposed to, I think she was, shall we say, upfront about the whole matter. And people have said that her odor is sometimes objectionable. The British press, some organs are saying it. I would actually prefer to resile over such matters beyond acknowledging the fact that they are being discussed, and I don't think they'd have been discussed 2 years ago. So I think that is an indicator of the level of unpopularity. Now, Harry was called upon on more than one occasion to apologize for slavery. And, of course, Madame Marquez is interested in reparations for slaves. I think it's wildly inappropriate and race baiting of the highest order for hosts or hosts' guests to be playing the race card quite so brazenly with another guest, because Harry and Meghan are guests. Now, admittedly, Meghan went there at the invitation of a race baiter to use her race to race bait as well. So there's a certain synchronicity about the whole thing. But what these idiots clearly don't realize is that for centuries, England and Spain were enemies. Colombia was never English, it was Spanish. I mean, anybody study the history? All of the buccaneers? I mean, English pirates raiding Cartagena. I mean, why would Harry, because he is a British prince, be in any way, shape, or form responsible for reparations in a former Spanish territory when Spain and England were enemies? I mean, the ignorance, the stupidity, and also, I don't know what makes these people think that only black people were slaves and that only white people had black people as slaves, when it's all historically totally inaccurate. There were more white people who were enslaved in the history of civilization than black people. Madness, absolute madness and stupidity. But I suppose it makes sense in a way. Harry and Meghan are allowing themselves to be used voluntarily to make money, to get attention, to create mischief by race baiters. It's not in the interest of this country. It's not in the interest of racial harmony. It's not in the interest of the world, but it's in Harry and Meghan's interest. Pathetic. Diana says, if Hank doesn't like what the public say or write about him, then he should get out of public life, period. Bye-bye. We will not miss you, Harry, and will not say another word about you. Bye the F bye, whatever the F bye is. Very well spotted, very well observed. That's the solution. He doesn't like the attention. Stay out of the public eye. Judith Gray says, we can understand why their chief of staff left his job before this fake tour. Can't we just? And it is a fake tour. It wasn't a quasi-royal tour. It was a pseudo-royal tour. And it was conducted in the most undignified manner possible. But they exposed themselves, as they always do. It's quite astonishing. And I am going to end with a little bit of gossip that I was told over the weekend. A friend of mine who was staying with me, because Saturday was my birthday, so I had a very teensy-weensy house party. I wasn't going to have any celebration whatsoever. But one friend said, oh, I absolutely cannot allow you to be on your own on Saturday evening. So either you come to us or we'll come to you, and it's going to be easier for you if we come to you. So they came to us. So then another friend said, what are you doing? So I said, oh, well, come over. And so we ended up with a small group of very good friends. It was only 10 of us for dinner. But one of them said that she had some gossip about, Paul Hollywood is a chef and a judge on, I think it's called British Bake Off. I've never seen the program, but it's very popular. And there has been a hue and cry in the village of Smarden because his wife's family owned the only pub in the village. And it's a central meeting place for the villagers. And they evidently wanted to sell it. They evidently, rumor has it, wanted to sell it because it wasn't making much money, but it was providing a service to the community For instance, Castle Goring doesn't make me any money to speak of, but I provide a service to the community. I keep my prices low for events so that people who wouldn't otherwise be able to have a wedding or an event in the castle will do so. It's important that you, wherever possible, support your local community. And anyway, they obviously decided that it wasn't financially feasible. And my friend said that her grandson, who's 16 years old and likes food, he's part French, he knows about food, and he knows the difference between good food and bad food, said that he went for lunch there and it was the worst meal he'd ever had in the whole of his life. And the word locally is that they started to serve such bad food that people wouldn't go. So they could then say that the business was no longer viable, and therefore they needed permission to have change of use, because it had to be changed from a pub license to, I think, a house license. And there was a lot of criticism about this locally. And evidently Paul Hollywood hopped to his wife's defense and said, well, they could have clubbed together and bought the pub themselves. Well, of course, I gather they couldn't have, because it's not enough of them. And so they didn't have the money to do it. But he found a really clever way of getting change of use permission, run it into the ground, and did. I gather his first wife would say, typical. But the second wife would not agree. That's why the first wife is no longer with him and the second wife is. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Okay? Thank you so much. Take good care and Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.